What's up, everybody? I'm Impendingduff, and thank you for coming to check out the video. I'm excited today because the Army Painter has sent me a pre-release preview copy of their brand new, super awesome War Paints Mega Air set. Now, this is a new line from the Army Painter. They spent 2.5 years developing this paint, and this was a big shock to me. I had no idea it was coming. I do work with Army Painter quite frequently on my Patreon. They provide me with stuff for the hobby loot crates that I send out every month via my Patreon. I am not officially sponsored by them or anything. This is not a paid advertisement. They did send me the product. I am going to be giving away the starter set here. They gave me the okay to give this away since the colors do duplicate in this set, so there's no reason for me to have two sets of colors, right? So I want to be able to give those away to you eventually. Stay tuned for details on that. That'll come in September. That being said, this paint set showed up on my door, and I'm going to do this video kind of just to say thank you to the Army Painter for trusting me, for giving me this paint set 2 months in advance before all of you get it. It is available. All 3 of the paint sets are now available for pre-order. They just announced the full set, like the big daddy one, with literally every color. There's a whole fluorescent line in the airline, but the mega set is $180 US MSRP. The starter set, actually I have my little flyer right here. The starter set was $45 MSRP, and for those of you over in Europe, that's $170 and $39.99. That breaks down to, the mega set 60 bottles of paint, so that breaks down to $3 a bottle of paint. There's not many lines of paint that you can find that are much cheaper, or cheaper than that at all, in fact. So I think the value is there. The product itself will kind of speak for itself in the coming portion of the video. So I'll shut up and let you guys see that portion. But before we jump into that, I wanted to remind you to do me a favor, and if you want to see more product reviews, plus I release a weekly tutorial every Wednesday here on YouTube that has been live on my Patreon for a full year, exclusive to Patreon. So now I'm releasing them on YouTube 1 year later. Hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. It's absolutely free to do so. It helps me out big time. And of course, always a big thumbs up down below, and feel free to leave a comment, concerns, whatever you would like down below, and I'll do my best to answer any questions I can, especially about the paint set. In the meantime, I will catch you guys at the end of the video here. You enjoy the unboxing and the review. Let's get into it. All right, here we are. This is the box opening segment. I'm going to do this in real time just so that you guys kind of see my true reaction and see everything that's within this box. So it comes with, what is this, 50 something paints, it looks like. And they're pushing the triad system for your airbrushes, so that's cool. How many paints are in here? 50 air, 9 metallics, 1 fluoro, 16 color triads. So yeah, I don't know if it's 50 paints including 9. I guess I could sit here and count them real quick, but I'm not going to do that. Right? So, you know, just break off the cellophane here. It's very nice. Very nice cellophane. Clearly Denmark has their cellophane game on point. Anyway, box, I mean, not much to say about the box. It is a slide-out box, which I actually prefer versus the break open the side. It came from Denmark, kids. I'm in Detroit, Michigan, United States, so it's a little jumbled, but that's life, you know. When you're crossing the entire world, that's expected to happen. So 2 trays of paint here. They do look pretty settled here. I can see some kind of mixing that will need to go on. There are mixing bottles within it. There are mixing agitator beads, mixing bottles. But some literature here, just kind of detailing the Army Painter line of products, which I am a big fan of their tools for sure. A lot of my patrons will know that Army Painter graciously supports my monthly hobby loot crate, which is a loot crate that gets shipped to your door every single month, chock full of all kinds of goodies that have to do with miniature painting. A little self-plug there. Check it out on my Patreon. In fact, there will be Army Painter items in this month's loot crate. So yeah, it's just going over what is already existing in the line, some tools, the sprays, the paints, the brushes, etc., etc. Just, some basic promotionals. War Paints. Air is here. This is kind of a little bit of a advertisement for what's within it. Kind of a quick little pamphlet informational thing. QR codes. I love QR codes. I use a lot of QR codes in my promotions. And then a Wargamers Army Painting Guide. Very cool. I love painting guides. I may not need them, but if you're a beginner painter, this kind of stuff is really helpful. Much like YouTube videos, of course. If you don't consume YouTube videos, this is a really useful thing. Quite a few in-depth little things here. I mean, really thorough, telling you how to use a hobby knife, files, clips. This is all stuff that beginners wouldn't know about, even green stuff in here. I really like this. This looks like a solid guide. Some really nice explanations on underlaying colors and primers. I like it. This looks great. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because this isn't a review on their painting guide, but it's a robust little book, right? I've seen this before many times. They've sent me a couple in the past. So that's that. Oh, look at this. Here you go. Nice little touch. It's always nice. I don't care what size the company is. A thank you goes a long way, right? We are the fiber that makes businesses successful, right? Me being a businessman and this being my full-time job. Without my viewers, without you fine folks watching my content, this wouldn't even be possible. So to have a little card in here that says, hey, thank you. Plus, if you have any issues, please give us a contact. I like that, man. It's a nice little touch. All right, on to the paints. So I don't know. I'm hoping it appears, of course, this is not the full set. So I'm assuming there's another layer underneath. I'm hoping that's intact. But I'm going to assume that these were set up in their triads because this is gray. Yeah, Unforgiven. I know this is a triad, right? Maybe not. Maybe not. I know this and this are in a triad together. There was, I think it's Angel Green. Is this it? Nope, Green Skin. Feral Green. Okay, maybe they're not placed. We'll find out when we remove these trays. But trays are a little chintzy, but I mean, this isn't going to stop me from buying a paint set like this. Having it dispersed, whatever. I'm not very picky. So this type of thing is not going to bother me, but it is a little chintzy for what it is. Keep in mind the price points on this. Let me grab the flyer real quick. I believe it's $180 US. Let's look here. Yeah, the mega set, which is this, is $180 US or $170 for you fine European folk. All right, let's take a look. Let's see what the next layer is. Yeah, see, a little more organized. It appears that these have moved on. They should sit in there like this. I mean, like I said, these are literally traveling I crossed an ocean. Lord knows what the postal carrier, whoever delivered it, I believe it was, I want to say it was UPS. Lord knows how they handled it within the thousands of mile journey that it made. But apparently it sits like so. It does appear that the triads are intact for the most part. Wild flesh. Maybe not. Maybe not. So to me, I mean, who knows how they're going to set this up for retail, but to me, I would like to see the triads kind of set up in order. Let me look at well, I guess the box is underneath here, but it doesn't appear that the triads are fully intact. Is there another tray of colors underneath? There sure are. Let's take a look at the next one. Again, you know, as expected, traveling across the world. There we go. Some metallics in here. Ooh, copper. Yeah, baby. I love a good copper. But these are all thinned to the right consistencies, apparently, for spraying directly out of your airbrush. Now, I very much encourage at least a drop or two of flow improver whenever you're using your airbrush, but I am going to put these to the test as far as how they perform as advertised. So we'll go on to the, I guess, I don't know what I'm trying to say. We'll go on to the usage portion. We'll kind of inspect these, take a look at them a little further, pop the tops off, and see what's inside the bottle, and then we'll use them through the airbrushes. So I'll catch you guys in just a second. Okay, so real quick, I went back and put all of the paint back into the slots, I guess, in the order of how they're laid out on the back of the box here. I didn't give you guys a shot of the back of the box yet, but it has a very quintessential Army Painter hexagonal breakdown of all the paints, and they're separated by their triads. And I actually found something really cool when I got through the process when I was doing it. There are a couple of things that I want to point out, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to take these paints out here. And you know what? I've already got paints out. Well, no, better yet, because I want to test something out later. But one thing that I noticed is, now here's their triad as laid out: regiment gray, uniform gray, and cadre gray. What you probably can't notice is, and I'll do my best to zoom in here, there's a base marker, a mid marker, and a high marker on all of these. Now what's cool is that's telling you base coat, mid-tone, highlight, right? And then on top of it, uniform gray has this little extra hexagon that says 100% color match. I believe that's for the sprays. In fact, I'm looking at the side of the box here, and I do see uniform gray advertised. It says, learn about our colors primer sprays. I airbrush prime, so I use a lot of Stynylrez and Monument primers. So I've not had the pleasure of using Army Painter rattle cans since I airbrush so much. This being a color match to the rattle can is a huge advantage, especially when you're doing giant armies. So it's cool to know, and this isn't the only paint in here. There are quite a few paints like this green skin and angel green, which is basically Dark Angel's green. It's nice to know that these are 100% color match guaranteed. Now, that's not even where it ends, guys. This is really freaking cool. I really appreciate the detail they took on these paint bottles. They're standard operating procedure dropper bottles, right? Like, so many different companies have the same bottle shape and everything. But this is what I love right here. If you've got a mess of paint, right? Maybe a drawer or whatever, and you don't necessarily keep your paint in order, you're not going to keep the box per se. Right here on the back of each paint in the triad is a breakdown of every color in that triad. So on this regimental gray base coat, you also know that you should be looking for uniform gray as your mid and cadre gray as your highlight. And the same thing across the whole line here. So if I grab the mid, poof, You know this is uniform gray. You know that your base is regiment and cadre, so on and so forth. I really think that's a great thing to add. Just that little bit of detail really helps in keeping organized, if you will. And I really appreciate that. I've also noticed there are metal mixing balls in here. At least that's what's pictured. I don't know if that picks up in the camera or not. I don't care what the stainless grade is. I don't trust metal. So I will probably end up fishing out the metal ball bearings and switching them out for glass, just because in the past I've seen paints get destroyed. My own paints get destroyed by metal ball bearings. I'm not saying that these paints are gonna get ruined by the metal bearings, but I like to be safe rather than sorry, especially at $180 for this paint set. I don't want $180 worth of paint going down the drain using metal. So I personally would rather be safe than sorry, and I'm going to switch them out to glass beads. Also, across the product, in very plain letters, shake well everywhere. I know in past situations with the regular Army Painter paints, there is a bit of extra medium in the bottles, and that's explained in detail very well on a couple of their videos, that you actually need to remove some of that medium before you go and do your first use with the paint line. I don't know how this is. I've got paint set aside for testing that I'm setting basically vertical so that I can see if I can get some settling, and I'll be able to inspect it. But it is imperative that you do shake your paints well no matter what. Given the past with the other line of paint from Army Painter, I would shake them extra well. I have a vortex shaker over here. I don't know if you'll hear this. Those are invaluable, especially for paints that are notorious for needing to be shooken up extensively. So don't be afraid to shake, and when you think you're done, shake a little bit more. I can't wait to see the quality of these paints, though, because typically the pigment will settle at the bottom. If you shake these up as intended excessively, you should have really good coverage. So I just wanted to point out a few things that I saw as I was putting the paint back into the box. So let's move on to the painting portion. Alright, so it's time to crack these bottles open and see what's going on inside. I had mentioned in the regular Army Painter line, they are kind of notorious for having extra medium within it. This being an airbrush paint, it should be relatively super thin. Now, kind of nice to note that you don't have to puncture the nozzle like you would on other brands. I'm going to go ahead and open this up and we'll see what we see inside. I did not pre-mix these at all, and they already look like they're fairly mixed up. But I'm going to go ahead and throw it on the vortex mixer and we'll get to it. It doesn't look like there's any type of medium, any excess medium. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this back together. I'll throw it on the vortex and then we'll come right back and we'll test out a couple of the troubled colors. So these being airbrush paints, they're basically advertised to be ready right out of the pot, right? So let's go ahead and just test that theory. I typically don't ever add anything into my pot without some flow improver, but let's see. The consistency seems pretty good. It is a little thicker than I would like to work with out of my own airbrush, but I want to test the product as intended by the manufacturer, so that's what I'm doing here. I just primed up some plastic card and put some black lines on it in order to kind of test the opacity or transparency of the paint as we do a couple of layers here. So that's 4 quick little passes. The brightness is pretty darn good. I really like how smooth it is. It covered pretty well, but you can still see the black just fine. That would be a normal, like, first coat for me on a miniature. 3-4 passes, right? Throw a little air down, let it dry. We all know that the paint kind of becomes more translucent as it dries, that less reflection off the moisture of the paint will show its true colors here. So I'm going to go ahead and throw another pass of 2 or 3 coats. So we're up to 7 coats there, and again, it's shiny, so it's going to appear more red right now. But as I hit it with some air here, you can see it drying in real time. Now, over white, that bright red, that fire engine red, is really nice and vibrant, getting good, even coverage. I really like how it's spraying out of the brush as is. I would venture to say, I mean, granted, it's an airbrush paint. Airbrushes are glazing tools, right, kids? We should know that if we're airbrushing. Airbrushes are glazing tools, not opacity tools, meaning each layer is a very, very thin glaze, not a caked on layer, not something that's going to go right to pure hue, right? So here we are. I've got, what was that, another 3 coats, so we're up to 10 coats, and it's just now starting to take over that black. Not bad. I'm impressed. Red is a difficult color to paint with. You still have that influence, so if you zenithal prime, you'll be able to get through it, no problem. You'll still be able to see that influence and all that buildup from your zenithal prime by only doing 4 coats, 4 quick passes with the airbrush. But you can also make it a nice, thick, opaque color. The difference between 4 passes in the first shot, the added 3 passes to make it 7, that difference was minuscule. But then the extra 3 passes to go to 10 total passes has almost pure color over that black. So that's pretty impressive. I like it. Now I'm just going to drop a drop of Flow Improver in there just to thin it down a little bit. See where we're at. Let me get my little mixy stick. Mixy. Now just barely thinned, I actually would, personally, I work in thinner than that. In fact, let's just do it. Boop. Probably be somewhere in the realm of this consistency. I really like a thin paint when I'm airbrushing. I find that building up subtle gradients is a lot easier. See how that flows really quick? Now let's go ahead and test out my consistency. And I'm going to backflow because any extra paint that's in the nozzle is going to be thicker than the stuff that I just put in there to thin down. So, all right, let's do that right next to it. Let's see how it looks. So that's 4 shots, and even thinned down. Like, I'm going to say right now, you don't need to thin this paint. As advertised, you don't need to thin this paint. But there's my 4 passes. And again, it's a nice, smooth, consistent color. It's a little more dull, a little more transparent. Obviously, I've thinned it. But let's go ahead and add 3 more layers, and poof, we're getting that opacity. We're getting there, right? The Flow Improver has kind of smoothed out the paint a little more. Not that the paint needed to be smoothed out. Coming right out of the brush, right out of the bottle, it was creamy. It was good. I dug it. So let's go ahead and do the 3 more passes here and see how it compares to the one above. There is a slight difference in the shade. It's God, I mean, on camera, I don't even know if you guys can notice the difference between the two. This is just slightly lighter than this. Like, this is more of a fire engine kind of going to crimson, where this is almost like, I'd say this is like a solo cup red. This is more like a pure red. So, not bad. Not bad at all. Now I'm going to go ahead and try out some other colors here. So I mixed up this demonic yellow, and of course I shook it well as advertised. We all know yellow is kind of a troublesome color, so here it is in the cup, unadulterated, as advertised. Let's see what it's all about. Ooh, on the napkin it's already promising. So, here we go. Let's test it out. Okay, hold on a second. That's one shot, guys. That's one shot right there. That's pretty dang good. I'm going to go ahead and add 3 more here. 1, 2, 3. Now that's like my general base coat right there. Now yes, it's yellow. It's translucent. You're going to see through it. But notice how bright it is. Obviously being on white back, it's a little bright. That's what white does. But notice that strip down in the black there. I mean, you can clearly see a good amount of pure yellow on that black. Obviously, the outer edges of the spray are going to be more feathered out. But for 4 passes, that's really encouraging. I'm actually really impressed with this. Let's add 3 more and see where we're at. Alright, dry it off real quick. This is just pure air. Guys, that's 7 passes. Over black, that looks great. Now for me, I have a yellow tutorial on my Patreon. It'll be available eventually to the public. But my yellow tutorial, I go through my 2 favorite colors to base yellow, which are purple and brown. Over brown, that's going to look amazing. That's 7 passes. That's less than the red. Each of these was 10 passes, right? You can really see that yellow over that black stripe. This has some serious pigment to it. Let's go ahead and add the final 3. I mean, I'm impressed. That's pretty dang good coverage for yellow. Alright, so I went ahead and sprayed the next few colors, and blue, that was 10 passes of blue. The floral green, like every fluorescent, you know, it's translucent. It's extremely translucent. As far as its value as an air paint and as a fluorescent paint, very highly rated. I liked it. It was very similar to the floral line that I prefer to use. I don't know why they would use green in the set. If, you know, it's a sample, you only get one fluorescent color. I would have went with like red or orange, something like along that line. But still, the green is a killer color. I actually use a lot of green fluorescent, so the coverage is good. That's 10 passes with the green. I'm happy with it. I like it. The blue, of course, we all know that the darker tone colors are going to cover. You pretty much eliminate all of that black line underneath it with 10 coats, right? But then we move on to the metallics. Now, I want to preface this with metallics are some of the hardest paints to please people with. And unfortunately, I have to say that I am not a fan of these metallics. I will say one positive. I think the colors are great. Like the actual color of the metallic is good. I'm really picky about my golds and silvers. But the pigment, like the size, I don't know the technical term, but it's like I'm blasting pure glitter through the brush, and you can see throughout the other colors how much that affects everything. I mean, there are literally giant glittery specks all the way up here, out here, you know. To me, the issue is that the pigment, the mica, the metal flakes within the metallics are not ground down enough. They're not fine enough. And I personally don't really care for how they sprayed through the airbrush. They were not very clean. They were not consistent. You can see a little bit of a pooling over here in the gold, possibly. If I do that, you might see it right there. The gold color is rich, vibrant. In fact, I was going to do this in a different part of the video, but I just went ahead and base coated this Stormcast. The color itself is good. I don't care for the pigment flakes. I just don't. I don't like it. You can see over this leather cloak the overspray that happened. I feel like the overspray is a lot more prevalent in these metallics. I did a little bit of a Necron. So I'm not a fan of the big main brands metallic paints at all. This reminds me very much of their silver, like their most popular silver. It looks plastic to me. I'm not a fan of these metallics. Their colors, if you were to grind down the pigments finer and maybe add a little bit more of the thinning agent, the medium, whatever is suspending this pigment in this range of paint, I would say that you might have a decent metallics, but thankfully the metallics in this line are not very many. There's 6 true metallics and 3 off metallics. I call them off metallics because there's glitter green, gemstone, and elven armor. Those are colored metallics. But out of 60 paints, 6 of them, so 10% of the paints are not impressive so far. And that's, take that for what it is, because I've yet to try the copper, tainted gold, plate mail metal, or rough iron. I just used, what was this? Greedy gold and shining silver. I picked these because they seem like the most common colors, right? For me, the gold, the silver just aren't doing it. In fact, let me see if I can't get the camera to focus. You can see up close how grainy it is, how it's almost like party confetti. And if you look in throughout all the rest of the card, you could see that flaking, whatever you want to call it, throughout. It's just, to me, it's not the consistency I'm looking for in a metallic paint, especially when I'm airbrushing a metallic paint. And if you know who I am and you know my recent works, I've been working on a ton of Necrons. And my Necron army is very, very metallic, right? And there's a lot of depth in my metallics. I don't know that I would recommend the metallics out of this set. The rest of the paints, awesome. Coverage is amazing. The sprayability is good. You probably need to thin down the paints to get finer detail, but they're really, really matte. I like a good matte finished paint. The metallics have a satiny finish to it. That's a plus. I like a satiny finish to my metallics. Obviously, if we go down the matte world, we're going from metallics to orange and gray, right? So you can't matte down a metallic without losing that sheen. It's good to have a little bit of a satiny finish, because if you do a lot of ink workups to do true metallic metals, then that's good. I want to give you as many positives as I can, because I kind of just crapped all over these metallics, but I want to be honest with you guys. I'm not happy with the metallics. I won't be using the metallics. I will, let me pump the brakes there. I will work with them and see if I can find a consistency, adding thinner, adding flow improver into the paint. I'm going to also give a little bit of a buy here, if you will, because I'm using my Sotar with a fine tip needle that's a 0.2 needle. So I'll throw it through my Patriot, which has a 0.5 needle. Maybe I'll get better results. But as far as detail goes, I'm not painting with this paint for detail, unfortunately. Well, with these metallics. The rest, the opaque paints, the floral paint, excellent. Excellent line. I'm pretty happy with them. I'm actually
I'll be straight with you guys. I'm really impressed with the rest of the line. I had high expectations because these have been in development for 2.5 years now. I'm very impressed with the rest of the line. The metallics, not so much.
All right, so there you have it. That's my full unboxing and review of the paint. Let's recap real quick here. The regular colors, the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, standard operating procedure rainbow colors are pretty dang solid. I'm pretty happy. And frankly, I'm really surprised. There's always been a stigma around Army Painters paints and the extra medium and people not understanding how you have to expel some of the medium when you first get a brand new bottle, and to shake the ever-living crap out of them. It's clearly noted on these bottles. First of all, first and foremost, I want to tell you guys that there is no medium expulsion needed. You don't need to open the bottles and squirt out extra medium or anything. These things are ready to go right out of the pot. And for me, that's a huge step in the right direction. Then, of course, the bottles are just plastered with shake well. I mean, that's pretty much a given with any paint line. You should be shaking your paints very well, making sure that you disperse the pigments within the medium. They are resting, right? So you got to mix them up to get proper coverage, right? And that's kind of a cheap segue right there. The coverage is phenomenal. Even yellow, as you saw in the video, one of the most troublesome colors for us painters. And again, I've always said to my students on my live show on Twitch, etc., if you want to paint flawless yellow, get an airbrush. It's really that easy. Yellow is not scary. White is not scary. Army Painter produces a very nice yellow in this set, and I only tried one of them. So there's 3 or 4 of them in there? Yeah, it looks like 4 of them in there. So I would have confidence in buying this set. The only disappointment for me were the metallics. The metallics are a little too thick of a pigment. The mica flakes are really, really chunky, and it could be that my brushes weren't perfectly clean, but I know how my brushes work. I teach classes on airbrushing at Gen Con and Adepticon and all the different cons. If it has con after its name, I'm probably teaching a class on airbrush. I'm sponsored by Badger Airbrushes. I've shot a few metallic paints through my airbrush in my time, and it was a little troublesome. Frankly, I like the colors of the metallics, but I would like to see those pigments ground down a little more. They kind of end up splattering farther than you should be used to. When they atomize in the airbrush, they kind of really end up way away from places they shouldn't be. Overspray is acceptable to a degree when you're spraying with an airbrush, but that's a minor setback. I would not take those metallic paints and count them as a reason not to buy these sets. This set gets my full endorsement. I think it's a great value at $3 a bottle. For $180, you literally got a paint set to cover every need. The fluorescent that was in there was really good. I like it. It definitely could give a run for its money, the regular brand fluorescents that I use. I'm really happy with the set, and it will see regular use within my painting repertoire, if you will. It's ready right out of the bottle. I typically tend to thin my paints regardless. You can thin your paints. I use flow improver. Whether you use thinner, flow improver, or a combination of both, or water, they all work. I tested all 3 on my own. So I have to say with confidence, I definitely give a big old thumbs up. Hell, I'll give it 2 thumbs up. It's a solid set, and I look forward to hearing what you all think about it when you finally get to try them for yourselves. Most air paint lines are pretty serviceable, but I tend to just use normal paint. I'm not going to say the general brand that I always work with, but I typically thin my paints down to turn them into an airbrush paint, and you basically can use any paint that you use for regular brush painting as an airbrush paint, but there is something to be said about the convenience of having ready-to-go paints. Some people, working family, parents, whatever, you've got
minimal time to hobby, right? You've got a half an hour after you come home from being at the office all day and cooking dinner for the Rugrats and taking little Johnny to soccer practice and little Sarah to ballet or whatever you're doing, you know? Or maybe you're playing D&D. Who knows what you're doing, but you got a half hour, and that half hour gets real skinny real quick if you're mixing paint and thinning this and thinning that. With these, you can just pop them right into your brush, and you're good to go. So, like I said, 2 thumbs up, and a huge thank you to the Army Painter for trusting me in testing out the brand new set. I'm honored and extremely privileged to have this opportunity. So, thank you very much, Army Painter. And thank you to all of you fine folks out there consuming this video, watching it, consuming it. That was weird. But yeah. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I do have a few other product reviews. I, of course, will have more in the future. And, like I said in the beginning of the video, new tutorials every single week, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're interested in checking me out live, I stream on Twitch 3 nights a week. I'm not going to say the schedule here, because if this is a year later, I might have changed my schedule. But come check me out on Twitch under the same name. I'm basically Impendingduff, one word, across all platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, TikTok, you name it. If there's a platform, I'm on it, right? Of course, if you like what I'm doing and you want to support me, you can check out my Patreon campaign. I do this for a full-time living, literally make my income going to conventions, teaching classes, and making content for all of you. So if you enjoy it, check out the link down below, become a patron, and we'll see you on the next video. Take care, gang. Alexa, studio on.
Okay.
I forgot something. This video got a little too long, so look for part 2. I'm going to actually paint a miniature, a full-blown Space Marine. Probably in the next week or 2. I'll be doing a Ultramarine, unless you put in the comments down below which chapter you want to see in the next video. So I'll see you in next video where I actually paint a full miniature. Take care, gang. Thank you very much.